Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. How are we all doing today? Everyone is being told that we are going live, which is phenomenal. Hello, fans of Everybody Loves Raymond. Good to see everybody again. Hello, Barbara. How are you? Hello, Gil in the United Kingdom. Good to see you as well. We will be joined by Andy. I'm very excited today. Spring is happening. Hello, Orlando. Hello, New Jersey. Hello, everybody. Yeah, good. Good to have our weekly hangout. Everything is good here. Oh boy.
What's wrong?
Yeah, what's
Think
wrong?
I look good. What do you mean, oh boy? What are you trying to do there?
It has nothing to do with looks, Andy. Now, Andy,
I think it does. I think it
welcome.
does. You look so much younger. You've had so much work done. I'm surprised that you didn't finance one of the COVID relief bills.
That was a big lean-in. So, Andy, I see a lot of the top of your head. Is there any?
Is that better?
Much better.
You want me back more?
No, that's good. That's good. I was just seeing more of your hair, which is fantastically good hair. Yeah.
You want my COVID haircut joke?
Let me hear it.
All right. Hey, if you don't like my haircut, wait 10 minutes. Because I cut it every 10 minutes. Actually, Susan cuts it now. She does an amazing job. And so I say, goodbye, salons. Hello, 12-hour haircuts.
Now, do you... does Susan... So for those... let me just go back, because a lot of people are joining. This is Tom Caltabiano. I was a writer on Everybody Loves Raymond for all 9 seasons. And we're talking to Andy Kindler, who we'll get into a lot of details, but Andy did a ton of episodes as a guest star, and he was one of the favorite guest stars that I wrote for. Oh yeah, that is Andy. Now, is that a self-portrait, Andy, or what is that?
This is a drawing. Someone said this is called fan art, but I don't have any fans.
So Andy, you'll recognize from some of the best episodes of Everybody Loves Raymond. And I want to now, Andy, first of all, thanks for doing this. And I deliberately don't want to talk to anyone before they come on, just to catch up.
Yeah, it's good to keep it real.
Yeah. Rick Murata says hello, by the way.
I miss Rick Murata. How come he won't return my calls?
Yeah,
my screen's going dark, Tom. My screen's going dark.
That's why Rick. So for those of you watching, Rick Murata did the music for Everybody Loves Raymond, and he is a world famous drummer. And Andy did a show that we'll get into. And
someone asked if I played the character Andy.
Yes. Well, we had someone guesting as Andy, but all right, Andy, let's go back, because we're gonna be off.
Someone requested that. Sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna be off on a million tangents. So let's just go back. So yes, just to answer, thank you. Andy did play the character Andy. Look, all these people are quoting your lines. Thank Barbara. That's great.
Brajol.
So Andy, let's go way back. Because a lot of people want to hear how someone ends up on Everybody Loves Raymond, but at the same token, as these people are such big fans of the show, we kind of take it for granted, because we're like, yeah, we're there and did the table read, and then that went well, so now I got to go to another audition. Let's go back to Andy Kindler, stand-up, early days.
Okay. And Tom, if you want to just leave and come back in about 45 minutes, I will start from the beginning.
Actually, do you have an
answer? In my heart. When I was 5, I used to play a tennis racket like the Beatles. Okay, so what happened was Raymond and I are both stand-ups. But a lot of people, there are some misnomers, if I knew what that word meant, is that Raymond and I were both on the Young Comedian special, in I think 1992, and we were both born in Queens. And if I ever feel bad about my career, which is often, I just go to, and if I was still flying, which I'm not, or seeing people, which I won't, go to Kennedy Airport or LaGuardia, and you hang around there in a center area with a revolving thing of some type of DVDs. That's my town. But we didn't know each other as stand-ups because, we only met on the Young Comedian special. But then now, sorry.
Now, and let me give a framework just because for people in England and Australia, the Young Comedian Special is a very prestigious thing to get onto. So it was, I believe, annual HBO.
Not quite annual, but that was their idea. You know, they made about 16 of them over 30 years or whatever.
So right. So they're basically picking this young potential, crop where they see promise. There's funny people is the bottom line. They have to be entertaining. But I think Judd Apatow, who went on to do some stuff, was on one of them.
He was on mine. Judd Apatow, Ray Romano, Janine Garofalo,
Bill Bellamy.
Did I say Janine Garofalo? Judd Apatow. I forgot. I'm so terrible with names. But Dana Carvey was the host.
Right. And so it's a bit, so what Andy is mentioning, the Young Comedian Special.
Nick DiPaolo.
Nick DiPaolo, a very funny comedian, the Boston guy. So that Young Comedian Special, though, is no small thing. That is a huge accomplishment. And let's say there's, I don't know how many, there's 7, now there's about 80,000 comedians, Andy. But back then, maybe there were 1,000 working comedians, if that.
There might have been more only because I did the Young Comedian Special probably at the height of what was known, and the kids won't know about this. There was a stand-up comedy boom. And kids today probably won't remember it, but there were more clubs than ATMs in cities, and it was a whole thing. So there were more than 1,000 for sure, but not as many as today.
So I would say that, just going back from a historical perspective for comedians, in the old days, let's say the 60s, there was like the improv, there was no comedy circuit like became ultimately what Andy's talking about is every restaurant, everything, Wednesday night is comedy night at Flappers. That's actually a comedy club.
That's an actual place now.
In Burbank. But any restaurant would have, stand between the service window, don't try and grab any of the food, and you'll be doing comedy. So this comedy boom went from, you had Richard Pryor and George Carlin and a handful of comedians, and then all of a sudden in the I'm going to say mid 80s to late 80s, right. There was a nationwide the booking of comedians with Jerry Stanley and all this whole circuit. Okay, so now
Jerry Stanley, because I think you meant Seinfeld.
No, Jerry Stanley's a obscure booker.
Oh,
yeah.
I never got Jerry Stanley bookings.
He booked. Well, it's not important. In a public venue to share why.
Tony, who was
Camacho? Tony Camacho. Yes. Okay. So Andy is on this prestigious thing, and sometimes something happens with your career, meaning you go to Hollywood and something happens, or you're just back on the road and you're a working.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Tom.
So go ahead.
What's happened to me, Tom?
I don't think so.
I'm
you
not
can't.
Part of this Raymond caravan.
You're wrong.
Here's what happened. Phil Rosenthal sat me down. He said, "You're going to be a recurring character. You know what that means, Andy?" I said, "I'm not sure." He goes, "It means not that many appearances." And then he said, "You're going to make as much money as you need to keep health insurance every year, and not up." I said, "Ray, it wasn't Ray. Phil." And by the way, I should throw in at this time now that how it really happened. I got on the show was we all ate breakfast at that Victor's.
Okay, great. So what Andy's talking about is there's a diner where a bunch of old comedians would get together, not so old, but just and hang out on a Sunday. And it was a deli, and it felt a little New Yorkish. And so Phil would go there every week, and a bunch of old writers. And Andy, you were there because when Phil got word that Everybody Loves Raymond was picked up,
right?
Yes, he was at Victor's.
Were you there that day?
I was not there. I was in New York.
I was at that particular meal.
Oh, this is awesome. So now we're going to go back again. You do the Young Comedian Special. How do you end up in LA?
Oh, okay. What happened was there's a lot of misconceptions about my career from the 2 to 4 people who follow it. But one of the misconceptions is I'm from New York, but I drove out to Los Angeles in 1978. My goal was to be a singer, songwriter, guitarist. And when I got to LA, there were only about 50, 60 million other singer, songwriter, guitarists. And I tried to make a living in music. No thanks to Rick Morata, who was hanging out with James Taylor. And then, so I started LA. I started comedy in LA, and not even because it was a plan. I just happened to live here. It was not a good, I don't recommend it to people. But I started in 84 in a duo, and I went on my own in 86. So,
And where, yeah, sorry, Andy. So where are you, first of all, how are you paying your rent?
okay, so I literally drove cross country in 1978 with a 1972 Country Squire, Ford Country Squire station wagon. I drove out with a girlfriend who decided upon during the trip that we weren't that good for each other. And so then we go out. I try to make a living in all of these top 40. I'll write original songs during the day and I'll play in top 40. I had terrible jobs. I sold door to door. And then I just started in the mid 80s just because some friends encouraged it. Meanwhile, Ray Romano was on the other side. I went back to New York in the late 80s and all through the 90s to play New York places. And I would live with my folks in Queens at the time.
So then, this is fascinating because I didn't know. So wait, so you're trying to be the singer-songwriter, but why come to LA for that?
No, that's a good point. You ask questions like I could never do this job because I'm not interested in what the others have to say. But this case, I was a director friend who's a wonderful guy. Sadly, he passed away. He was always saying, "You got to come out to LA." So by the time I was done, I wanted to have a change of pace because my parents lived in New York. My dad was a plumbing and he was a heating contractor. He didn't want me to go into business with him, but my mom did. But I might have just by being there not really started on my own. So that's why I went to LA because I had a director friend there. I thought I'd do some theater there and stuff like that.
And so, by the way, is your director friend somebody that we would know, or
no? Sadly, well, people in theater know. His name was Christopher Catt. He died a few years ago. What an amazing guy, though. He influenced a whole bunch of people who went to Binghamton. I went to Binghamton, upstate New York, the State University of New York at Binghamton, the same time period that are you sitting down? Mr. Paul Reiser went there.
Nice.
But we didn't know each other then, and he doesn't seem that familiar with me now. So that 1978, I graduated. I am 64 years young.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, the comment there that just came in is Andy looks very young.
He is the official Mexican. I'm not saying this is a joke.
Yeah.
That was the official Mexican of the my thoughts of my podcast, which is called Thought Spiral.
Yes, official Mexican of Thought Spiral.
Thought Spiral with Josh Elvis Weinstein and me, and that's what he's coming up with.
And Andy, where do people watching find that podcast? Wherever
you can see it. You can see it in Apple this, Schmoopy that, Scoopa Dang that. But you can't. The only place you can't get it is from where you usually get your
podcasts.
No,
nice.
You can't find it there.
So, Andy, I want to go back because it's 84. You're in LA. You don't know anybody. Your girlfriend's just
I haven't smoked any weed today, Tom. Someone asked me if I smoke weed, and it's one of the few times you'll catch me sober.
By the way, this feels like normal Andy.
Well,
yeah. So, but you land in LA. Your girlfriend breaks up with you. I
said that already, Tom. That's not nice.
But you're alone. And what are you doing? Like, let me find. I'm going to go to the Guitar Center and see if somebody needs a song. I mean,
you are not too. Not only are you close, I worked at the Guitar Center for 1 solid year, and everybody who works at the Guitar Center, I don't care who you are, anybody. No, you could be the most brilliant person in the world. You will definitely say to yourself, "I think I'm going to make some pretty good contacts there at the Guitar Center when Eddie Van Halen comes in." Yeah. So, but I lived in the South Bay. You know the South Bay.
South
Hermosa
Bay,
Beach,
yes.
Manhattan Beach. I drove out to LA and I thought, this is the most, I couldn't believe it. I drove to LA, and this is actually true, and I'll keep it short. I drove up to LA through San Diego, and I thought LA was going to be like Laguna Beach, baby. Look at all La Jolla. I can't wait to get to LA. I can't wait to get to LA. And then when I got to LA, strip malls, pizza on a paper plate that was on a sandwich.
Yes. Yeah. So you're described, just for, let's say someone in England is going, I don't know what he's talking about. It's idyllic. You're driving up from San Diego. It's idyllic, beautiful, stunning, everything. And then you
Yeah.
get to Los Angeles and not quite as,
No, it wasn't, except for the South Bay.
yeah, Hermosa Beach. She's talking about, yeah, this is also, if you know Beach Boys songs, it's kind of where you think of, you know, I mean.
They're from Lawndale. The Beach Boys are from the South Bay, technically from Lawndale. But it was the 80s. And I became very interested in beach volley, not male beach volleyball. I became very interested in watching female beach volleyball because of how amazing a sport it is.
Yes. This is, by the way, if we spent 20 dinners,
you never would have guessed
that probably
this, right?
wouldn't have come up. No, never would have come up. So now, Andy, are you going to you're not even thinking of doing comedy at this point?
I am, in the sense that I always was, like when I was, I came up with the lounge singer before Bill Murray. A lot of people aren't aware of that.
No,
I would put my shirt on backwards. I look like a salamander. So it's odd that I never thought about being a stand-up, because I never did. I grew up on Jackie Houston, but I wanted to be a musician. That's
right.
all I wanted to be.
And going back to 83, 84, sorry, somebody's correcting you. No, the Beach Boys are from Hawthorne, but
What did I say? Lawndale? I've been making these mistakes a lot yesterday. Tim, I'm sorry, Tim.
Yeah.
I really, I can't get people.
So,
yes, that's true.
Andy, one of the things that's related now that comes full circle, the thought of doing, in other words, now, your parents could say, okay, you're going to go to college. Are you going to do accounting? Are you going to become a doctor? Are you going to be a stand-up comedian? I mean, these are career paths. But in 83, 84, there was no clear comedy path of, oh, there's 480 clubs that I could make a living doing, right? It's so abstract at that point. So then
I was lucky because I just happened to, when I started it, I was in a duo. I was at a party with a friend who worked at the company. I was selling stereos at the time. University Stereo, Pacific Stereo, were big stereos. Federated was a big stereo store, and I was selling stereos. And my friend said I was doing impressions at a party, and he said, "Hey, you should try stand-up." And he convinced me to try stand-up, and it was amazing. I don't say I recommend it to everybody, but being in a duo when you start delays the time period when you cry after a set, which happened to me in '86.
I know, yes. I've heard this from Martin and Lewis, but obviously before their breakup. But Andy, where was the first time you did stand-up, and what do you do?
I think that it may be that the first time we did stand-up was maybe the Laugh Factory we signed up for, but there were also the club that we mostly performed at, my partner and I, was called Igby's, which was a famous club in West Los Angeles. And the rumor is, what I totally buy, is that the club owner, Jan Smith, very nice guy, he named it Igby's. So if you were looking in a phone book, it would be between the Ice House and the Improv. Does not mean anything.
Nice.
Igby's. And I also did, there were a lot of horrible places, good horrible places. There was a place called the Deli Smoker. I booked my own little Italian restaurant. So, I mean, I really dived in. So
now you're doing stand-up, and you get the point where you're going to go up for an acting role, or you take acting classes, or you're in an improv class. What is the transition from?
Well, I thought that in a certain way, this is unrealistic, and I'm joking, but I really thought that people had heard about my collegiate background in theater, because the people I had met were such cool people. We had the greatest theater department. I would have been a theater major, but it was all based on this Arthur Lesack voice system. So I didn't actually. So what happened was, the very first job I was going to do when I started stand-up was teach comedy driving school, Tom. I didn't do it. teach comedy driving school. But it just happened to be I started doing it, and then also another big break was waiting tables. I loved waiting tables almost as much as stand up.
Wow. And Andy, just for people that don't know, comedy driving school, when you, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the United States, if you get a bunch of tickets, you get a certain amount of points, and if you get too many points, you lose your license. So the way to work off those points is to go to driving school and have an instructor. You know, you're basically being punished for making those points. So they're going to take you through a full day, let's say, of here's what happens when here's the rules of the road. Here's the horrific
what
thing.
What does the yellow light mean, Tom? Speed up.
Hold on, I'm writing that down. Because I'll have to use that later. So now that's what that was. That's a legitimate thing where you have to be in a room with an instructor for 8 hours with 20 strangers who are trying to work points off their license.
And not in New York, right? It used to not be in New York. Is it in New York now?
Never heard of it in New York.
Right.
So there's a real need for it. And even if you're marginally funny, you're better than the people boring, you to death. Okay, so you liked waiting tables, and then there was also a great club called the Variety Arts Center downtown. So then I started to do, and I started going on the road. From 1987 to 1992, I went exclusively on the road 40 weeks a year. So what I started doing was I went out on commercial auditions. I went on tons of them. I hated them like poison. I came up with a lot of material. There was actually a sign, audition actors do not use elevators. That's what it said. That was the sign. Slink up the stairs like the scum that you are. And then once when I was, my worst, best experience was I was doing a commercial audition. And when they used to say slate, I would try to be funny. I go, hi, I'm Ed Kindler. And the guy says, don't be shticky. He says, and so this is from Dr. Katz. So what I said was, I heard that. You know how I heard that? I hate the Jews. That's how I heard that. Yeah,
stop
and for
doing it up, you Jew.
Yeah, and for people, clearly the subtext was there. For people that don't know, you go in an audition and they go, okay, go ahead and slate yourself, and that just means, hi, I'm Tom Caltabiano, reading for this. They just want information. They don't want.
Right. And my plan was bad. I never got parts from being funny in the audition. My plan was because I was too nervous to audition. I thought, I hate auditioning. Like if I audition, I was like, look, I'm going to do an audition. It's going to look like I can act. Forget about that. I forget about that. I can act. I just hate auditions. And that's why the Raymond thing worked out well. No auditions.
And I think for a lot of people, the way you go in, there's oftentimes a cattle call, because it's not like, hey, George Clooney, we need you to just read, we're going to feel it. I'm not saying when he was a superstar, but before then, there's often a cattle call where we need guy who seems like he's from Queens. Okay, there's 40 people that come in. For you, if you're the funniest person on the planet, the casting director has to go through this mill of 180 people. So if somebody comes up and is like, I'm going to do shtick during the introduction, they're just like,
you're anti-Semitic. Imagine being Imagine going in anti-Semitic.
It's a compound, it's a compound problem then all of a sudden.
That's why Goebbels was the worst casting guy, Goebbels.
By the way, I don't know any commercials he cast. I don't know any successful things he's ever done. So Andy.
Goebbels? You're not familiar with Goebbels? Well, you know Leni Riefenstahl's work, right?
Of course, I know Lenny's work.
You know Leni Riefenstahl? She was still upset. She was like 100 years old. She was like, what? I have one contract
one bad
with
period.
Hitler. I have one development deal with Hitler. I have a first look deal with Hitler, and that's all of a sudden.
Yeah, but she signed that deal before things went south. So
boom.
All right. So now, Andy, because I'm going to bring a little bit of Ray Romano into this, in that he was a stand-up.
Ray's here?
He was. By the way, Ray doesn't have Instagram. Ray doesn't have it. Ray, he doesn't know anything from anything. So
yeah.
No, but Ray would constantly. it's funny because he took exception to this. We did there was a documentary about the beginning of Everybody Loves Raymond, and I'm interviewed.
I saw that. Is that you talking about the documentary that you guys made?
No. That was our road tour. No, this was called The Story Behind Everybody Loves Raymond. And in it, I'm mentioning that Ray would kill in a club. A casting person would be there. You got to come in and read. And then ultimately he would tank. And he was on News Radio, and he got fired after the table read. And so I said in this interview on camera, I said, Ray was constantly not landing the part. And, Ray was like, well, not constantly. I'm like, but you never got the part. I mean, I'm not going to argue with it. The point I'm bringing up, though, is it's not necessarily a transferable skill. Just because you're good at stand-up and great at, this doesn't necessarily mean you can read other people's lines. Now, the comedic timing that you have, that the comedian, and we see it over and over again.
That's the advantage.
For the most part, people do stand-up. Their comedic timing is so inherently good. And it's just, you if you're a betting person, you would think, why doesn't network TV just use as many comedians as possible for comedy? Because I think if you can do comedy, you can do drama, but it's definitely not the other way.
Well, that's the thing that's amazing about Ray. I mean, I'm not just saying this because I was on the show, because literally there's nothing, I can promise you that there's nothing he's good. He could do something for me, like say hello at a party, and he's very nice to me, but there's no reason for me I have nothing to gain from the fact that I watched every single thing that Raymond's ever been in, and I have watched his acting change because it's similar to my own, not similar to my own acting, but I'm sure he went through the same things that many comics do. It's like, what am I going to, I'm looking like an idiot. Look at me, oh my God, I'm surprised I'm not looking at the camera. And look at what happened with Raymond. I thought he was always great on the show, but I think he has developed into he's just one of our best actors. He's an amazing actor. And that's from experience. That's from taking stand-up, and then you need the experience. Because I used to hate auditions. I was so nervous. But if you have the experience and you have a mind like Ray's, then you can put it together. And look how amazing he is. Yeah.
And I think it's funny because I'm just thinking for you, when the audition process and for Ray was terrible at the beginning, especially because you're used to, as a stand-up, getting feedback from the audience. So when you go into the audition, and just to be clear, very, very often you're going in for the audition and there's a casting person who has seen 100 people, but they're also reading with you. So you're going this impassioned thing and they're going, I understand. That's why I'm in love with you. So if I love you that much, then why are you not to? And they could care less how you. So the feedback, and for most comedians, if there's 300 people and there's one person with a sourpuss face in the front row, you're going, this show is terrible, and nobody's in. You could be getting a standing ovation, and that one person just like, when is the next comedian? And you're just keen on that person.
Well, so one of the funniest things that ever happened to me, I never preface something like that. I went on, my manager, Bruce Smith, is very, very funny. So I go on the audition for CSI, and I'm not making this up. This is what the part was. A part of a guy who likes to get used women's underwear. I don't know where this exists. That's the part I went out for. So before I go in, I hear as if there's a fight has broken out in the actual audition room, and there's sounds of chairs. So I call my manager. I go, I said, Bruce, what? There's a big fight or something going on. I go, what is that sound? He goes, that's the sound of someone getting apart, Andy. So I go in the room and I start reading this part about, I like the woman's underwear. And I start to feel horrible. Like, I don't like women's underwear. This is a horrible thing I'm reading. At the end of it, they look at me as if I'm the guy who wrote the hideous part. It's like, I almost said, what are you looking at me for? You wrote this disgusting thing about a guy who wants women's underwear. And now you're looking at me like I'm not, oh, he does that well.
Oh, so by the way, this has been a great lead up because now going back to you're sitting at a deli, Phil Rosenthal goes, he goes, I'm going to put you in the show, right? I want you to be one of Ray's friends.
Oh, I don't know if he actually, well, the day that he got green lit, oh no, I would never have asked him then. I think it was wasn't it because Scrovan and I don't really know how it happened. Tell me.
Okay, so yeah. So I honestly, so now let's go back a little. You're sitting there eating breakfast on a Sunday. The phone rings. This is before cell phones were everywhere. And the deli guy goes, phone call for Phil.
Right.
Phil answers. It's the president of CBS, and he goes, order, you've been picked up, basically, meaning your show, Everybody Loves Raymond, is going to be on the fall schedule, so order an extra omelet or something like that. So he gets the news that, this is the launching point of Everybody Loves Raymond while they're in the deli. So then in the writer's room were a bunch of stand-up comedians who knew you. You did something called Dr. Katz also, which Ray did also, which was an animated series where comedians talked about they basically did their bits, but it was helpful if you were a genuine person for it to translate. And so you did it, Ray did it, and Ray won a Cable Ace Award, I think, for that Dr. Katz. That award is what Ray's real brother picked up and said, "Everybody loves Raymond." Yeah. So
how could I have never heard this story in my whole
life? Yeah. So because Ray it was a Cable Ace Award at that time,
and he was brilliant on. He was brilliant on Dr. Katz. He was brilliant. Dom Herrera was. There were some really people who just took to that form.
Yeah, and I think going back to the acting thing, one thing about Ray, and it comes across with you also, Ray has a very tough time being dishonest on stage in delivering a stand-up comedy joke. Like he'll be like, it's got to come out, organically. And
no planned mistakes in his act. Like the act goes. I went inside a restaurant and I put my coat on a hooker. Did I say hooker? Because if I did, I prepared 30 minutes.
Yes. So now let's go to the first episode you do of Raymond.
The first, okay.
Yeah, which was it
the basketball? Was it?
Captain Nemo.
Yes.
And I was in that basketball scene. You probably don't even remember.
I do remember.
Okay, but so Captain Nemo. So you have Kevin James, Ray Romano, Brad Garrett, Dave Attell, and Paul Lyons. And we're playing Captain Nemo, and Nemo in real life was Ray's dog, but Ray named the pizza parlor after the dog. So there's Captain. So now you get the call to come in. I mean, that has to be a great feeling.
Oh, it's everything. First of all, just to let people know, I mean, I'm in therapy now. I've been in therapy for 4 years. I waited till I was age 59. I'm the oldest Jew to enter therapy. But when you enter therapy, you realize all the things that I had so much anxiety and so many things that I wasn't admitting to when they were going on. So at that breakfast, I'm going, yes, he's got a show. I'm not going to be in this show, right? It's like not only am I not going to be in this show, I had auditioned for I think the same year, The Breaks. I was going to be a series regular on a show.
On what show?
It would be named The Breaks.
The Breaks or The Breaks?
Yes, that was Michael Chiklis' show. That was the same. I think it was the same. It's so weird that you mix up stuff. It was the same year, I believe, because Rick Reynolds' show. Then they picked up 2 other shows later, and it was the Rick Reynolds show they picked up, not Alan show. Which was
okay,
right. So in that moment, because I always had envy and jealousy, but was taught in my family that it's a disgusting thing to do. You should never be jealous. You should never. So I always had the same thing. Like, why not me? Where you go, Phil? Why not me? Why not me? And why not me? Why don't you write a script first, Andy? That would help.
Well, by the way, what's interesting, since you bring that up for jealousy, I was listening to, I'd be listening to Mark Maron's thing, and the amount of Mark Maron has a podcast for those watching, and he would get in deep, and he's one of the earlier podcasts, and all these comedians I know talking about jealousy and jealousy and jealousy. And I remember saying to Ray, I go, Ray, not that I'm not, it's just not, I always feel like, and I'll make it very specific about Ray. Some people have been like, aren't you jealous that Ray's famous and you're not? I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I don't feel that, because I feel like Ray's doing his thing, and I'm not trying to be Mr. Like, well, I don't have emotions, but it just feels like Ray kicks butt in that area. And if I was going to make it, it's my responsibility, knowing that Hollywood is a huge crapshoot anyway. You got to be anointed by, especially in the early days when you just needed a network to put you on the air. Now you can be on YouTube, and if you're that talented, you should put out your stuff, and then, you should be discovered, let's say. So that jealousy, but I was surprised listening to Mark Maron's podcast, how many guys that I knew were consumed by jealousy. And I think it's a very common thing, but it's your responsibility for something to happen. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, and this is, again, Ray's not listening to this, so we can't, we're not doing this for any other reason. It just happens to be that Ray happens to be one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life, who's actually comfortable with himself as a person. He probably is less liable to jealousy, because I'm probably wrong about that. He probably has envy and jealousy like everybody else, but he's such a sweet guy and such a good person that it would probably be good to hang around with him, because he wouldn't be someone who was going, "Hey, Tom, check it out. I got another schmickle."
Well, by the way, yeah, he would, and he always shares his schmeckle. The idea, the one thing that you're hitting upon, I always say, the more famous and wealthy that my friends become, the better my life becomes just by default. You know what I mean? It's like in your group, like I would love for you, Andy Kindler, to win an Oscar. Then I'd be like, oh, yeah, I know it. Oscar winner Andy Kindler. Yeah, I know him. It just feels like
don't
So,
hold on too tight to that dream.
So, by the way, not to get all zen and stuff, there's so much to go around. There's just because Ray has a hit show doesn't mean Andy Kindler can never ever succeed.
You should have been my therapist back in the mid-90s.
Yes, you had no therapist then. All right, so you do Captain Nemo. It goes well. It goes well. And I'm telling you this from being in the writer's room. You had allies and had people who knew you, but Phil loved you. And I can say this. I think I wrote probably a third of your appearances are my scripts, or with other people. But it was only, if you were terrible, it would have stopped at, can we not have the guy from the
if you can't do it. I mean, there are stand-ups who can't act, and there
absolutely.
So it's like it is a skill. It is a gift. Acting is in a way a gift. But I always felt like I could act, but I had so much self-loathing. I didn't realize at the time I had it. I just thought I knew I had it, but not so much. So when you have that self-loathing and all of those things, that gets in your way of acting more than stand-up, because stand-up I did every single night so I could get over it quicker.
Well, and also in stand-up, you're getting immediate feedback from the audience. They laughed, they didn't laugh. Like there's no really, really good, I should say, sorry. Unlike acting class, and this is a thing that you'll find, you can be in acting class till you're 50, and people, Andy, you're so good at acting. Like if you can start out on the stand-up career, you're only going so far. If you don't get any laughs, your career stops itself, Right. Whereas acting class, you can be delusional to the end of time.
That's true.
You can.
Absolutely. Acting is the most, stand-up, I really felt like, as much pain as I was in at that time, and how much of a failure I felt like as of music, it was the most egalitarian thing at that time I could have done. Anybody could put their name in a bowl. Anybody could be, there were things I wouldn't do even when I first started. I never waited on Jamie Masada's 12-hour lines. So I always tell people, I go, don't do every single thing. Was not going to line up for American Idol or whatever. So, so it's like, but anybody can start. Anyone can start, because, and that's what's great about it. That to me was what was great about it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I agree. And that's why, your stand-up is this very, and I had a roommate who was a stand-up comedian, or is a stand-up comedian, Brian McFadden. And, he used to say, don't become friends with anybody until you see them on stage, just because if they're really terrible, they'll go. So now, okay, hello, Windhover, Number two, just watched the Sports Illustrated episode, the article today with Andy. So funny. That's awesome. Now, Andy, I posted a picture of you in the group hug. Do you remember what that episode was for? What the name of that episode was?
Well, you do, right?
I don't remember it. I took the picture, but I can't remember. I have 30,000 pictures. Someone here watching.
I think it's when Coco the Clown died, and we were doing that. Do you remember? You remember that Mary Tyler Moore with her hugging?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Can you throw it up now so I can see it? No, you can't throw it up.
It's up. It's up. No, I can't share it on this.
Yeah.
Somebody hates Raymond. Okay.
Oh, that was a great
Somebody
episode.
Hates Raymond.
That
great,
was one
great.
of my favorite episodes. Oh my God. He was a great actor. The guy who
hated Raymond.
And then Robert goes, I may be angry with him, Raymond, but I'm his brother. Oh, that was great.
Yeah. That was a Steve Scrovan based on a real life story. That happened to him with somebody.
With a sports guy too, I think, right? Was it a sports guy?
It was a radio guy. Right. A radio guy. I'll leave it at that. Mm-hmm. Only because by weird turn of events, that guy was in my house one day, and I was like, "Oh, we based an episode on you."
Would I know? Don't tell me, but would I know who he was?
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
I never knew that.
Great. So I think Andy. Someone asked how many episodes was Andy, and I think around 27, maybe.
I think you're absolutely right. I say 27. What happened was I actually got no thanks to my career. I became a series regular on a WB show for 1 year, and they wouldn't let me do more than 2 episodes. And I mean something. I'm not someone who holds a grudge, but I know every person's name who was involved with that. I know whose position, who was the head of casting at the
where
WB,
they live.
who wouldn't allow me. And then, that kept me I would have had maybe 31.
Well, I will say that stinks because I'm going to say this in the writer's room when you're an actor, because I know this because Doris Roberts would be like, "Are you working on my Emmy episode?" When you're in the writer's room, all you're doing in the writer's room is trying to write a good story.
Right.
Period. So if Andy's character helps service, so no one's in there going, even though it might seem it, and I would like to take credit for it, but that's not how it went. You don't go, boy, I really want to help Andy out. Maybe I can squeeze him into a few more episodes. You're only going, I want to write the best episode ever written. And then it's like, okay, there's a part in there for Andy would hit this out of the park. So selfishly, you're like, okay, yeah, Andy in this episode would be great. Yeah. From the actor, from the outside, you don't know if people are like, I don't want to see any more Andy. And yes, are there showrunners? Are there showrunners like that? Probably. But right. Phil loved you, and then it was just you hitting home runs, over and over again. So there's you just want if you go, that'll work in the script, which is like I said, if you were terrible in Captain Nemo, Scrovan, everybody going, I really want to see Andy more. It would have been like, yeah, we tried it, and the truth is that happened with a Dr. Katz, with Jonathan Katz, where he came in for the episode T-Ball, and it just wasn't working out.
Oh, he came in to act on it.
The table read.
Okay.
And Dan Castellaneta replaced him. And having said that, Ray was replaced on News Radio. So
right.
you never know.
There's nothing at all. There really is nothing at all personal about it. And Jonathan Katz, who is one of the greatest, funniest people in the world, he's had the greatest career. And it's interesting to me because the format he took off on, which was the Dr. Katz format, where there weren't, because Ray and I talked about this once on some interview about how, when you don't have to hold for the laughs, there's different styles of comedy that you can do. And so Jonathan Katz was perfect for that low key kind of delivery.
Yeah, and only because we've mentioned so much, the format of Dr. Katz was an animated show, is he plays a psychiatrist, and the comedian, Andy Kindler, for example, is on the couch telling stories, and they illustrate some of these stories.
Right.
Is that what the format was? And
Still
Dr.
one
Katz,
of the greatest shows of all time. I love
absolutely. And I think it's called something like Squiggle Animation or
Squiggle
something.
Vision, when it first came out.
Squiggle Vision, yeah. So now, Andy, just for the fans, do you remember now this is just the outside of show business thing? Because, you know, when I watched MASH, let's say in 1970, you're watching the first, and then Ken Levine, who directed a couple of Raymonds, when I found out that he was, you know, very high up in MASH as a writer, maybe even the head writer, I was like, well, you know, what was Radar like? What did Gary Berghoff off screen? And so what was your, because we're so close to it, but do you remember just talking to Peter Boyle, or do you remember any of those?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was first of all, not first of all, I was a huge Beatles fan. I had seen the movie Joe when it came out. So and we were both Jets fans. So there was another. I think you remember that time period where, and it's not before cable, but it wasn't like you couldn't get the games everywhere. And somehow we got the game online, and we were all following it. But I loved him so much. One time he said to me, when he was first on the show, he goes, "Can't believe I'm doing this for a lousy 5 figures." And stuff like that made me laugh. He was, you know, going in, I knew that he was John Lennon's best man. I would say that and the only thing I want to remember to say was that I was intimidated when I was on Raymond. And I was, it's like, I once met Catherine. Did I meet Catherine O'Hare? No, I didn't meet her, but I saw her on a show, and they were asking her about what it was like to be an SCTV, and the way she was asking you, she was like, it wasn't the same way for us when we were doing it as it was for the people who were viewing it. You know, like Raymond was the greatest. Nobody could argue it wasn't the great. It's like the first time I ever had. I mean, I don't like that kind of coffee now, but when it first came out, the Keurig, it was like, oh, it's amazing. You know, it's like. It was the most amazing thing, but I had a lot of pressure on myself. I wasn't happy with my acting, and there were all these people who were successful. So I wish I could go back and have more fun while it happened. But that being said, I had the greatest time.
Yeah. And I think, without a doubt, yes, somebody, yes, that's what Andy meant. That John Lennon was Peter Boyle's best man.
Did I mess that up again?
You just said it backwards.
Yeah.
You said Ringo was his tailor or something, but it's fine. The self-doubt that you're also describing, I mean, that's pretty common too. I mean, you know, it's only because I've talked about it with Ray, where he's like, the first time he did Vinyl, a Martin Scorsese project for HBO, in his mind, he's like, everybody's looking, going, why is this sitcom guy in Marty Scorsese's thing? And the president of HBO is going to just see Ray at the elevator and go, yeah, we know who you are and what you are. Do not come back. I'm firing you right now. So that type of self-doubt, I think, is a pretty normal, especially in this creative, ephemeral thing where, you know, this I want to ask you very specifically, where you never know what the director, for example, needs from you, or, you know, Phil. So you might, when you're doing stand-up, it's Andy Kindler, 100% Andy Kindler. No one's going to be like, yeah, Andy, you need to be. But when you're on the set, you never know that someone's going to be like, that's not how we envisioned it. And right. So we think we're going to need to go a different way.
You remember the David Lee story?
Yes. So here's the thing. We only have about 8 minutes left.
Okay.
And I want you to come back, because the David Lee story is so good. Yeah, you'll tell that then, because it's such, all the blood rushed away. Yeah, that I know the David Lee story. Yeah. And everybody watching will put a pin on it, but David Lee created Wings, which is a TV show, and also I think another big show that he did. Anyway, we're going to talk about an encounter.
I thought you were saying Wings was a big show. It was.
No, it was a big show. Yeah, and we'll tell that story next time about an encounter at, I think it was Craft Services, with Andy and David Lee, who was also directing an episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. I think he directed the PMS episode. So, all right. So now, Andy, you're going back to like, did you talk to Doris? Did you talk to Patty? Did you? Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody was. I mean, I guess the only people I didn't really talk to that much were the twins, because they were just, there was
4,
like,
3, yeah.
But I also knew like when John Manfrotati would come on the show. I mean, these were stand-up friends of mine, and so everybody on the show was so amazingly sweet, and Doris was sweet. So to me, it was like, I can't imagine a more positive for an actor. Couldn't be a more of a positive. And I guess one of the things that made the episodes I remember, the one I loved was the Brajol episode, because just the way it worked, and getting to work with Patty like that. And then the one that was amazing to me, which was where I felt like I could be like a slapstick character almost, which I never thought I could do, was the Wheel of Fortune episode, because there's nothing more fun than when you're executing a joke that simply is you're being shoved on a chair. And so it's like, I have to say, I cannot. I could almost cry. I could almost cry when you think about it, but it's like SCTV was not for Catherine O'Hare what it was like for me watching it. So
right.
It isn't like, oh, I wish I had been back there, because all of my insecurities, all of those things were happening. But there were so many great actors that came through there, and so many great experiences. It does feel like I was where everything was happening.
Yeah, and I think off of that, because it sounds like a broken record, because everybody who comes on here, obviously someone's not going to come on and be like, let me tell you how terrible it was to work on Everybody Loves Raymond. But, it's a universal thing that, yeah, are there differences? Are there, yes, in the normal scheme of things, but for the creative process to have this supportive atmosphere and be able to take risks, there's nothing worse than walking on eggshells and being like, I don't even want to take a risk with this joke. They're going to replace me. They're going to instantly. So that applied once the show was up and running. You had this great because I've been on shows where there's backstabbing and doubting and all this stuff, and it's terrible. You can't create under that environment. So for you as a guest, because you're coming, that's a lot of appearances. Like, you have to have maybe the most appearances, wow, of any.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's only you and John are the only people that even, that's
Tom McGowan. Tom McGowan was some. Yeah, right.
He was hard. So Tom McGowan, Phil's friend, phenomenal actor, right? I mean, just phenomenal. Broadway, all the stuff. But the storylines, you couldn't fit as many. He might have been working on Frasier.
Yeah, he was on Frasier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Used to go. That was the greatest when we would go to. I mean, this is like, it feels like a different life. We go to Pinot Hollywood, and all the people from Frasier would come over, like David Hyde Pierce. So, I really enjoy your show, gentlemen. And I mean, it was incredible. It was a dream.
It's kind of like, and what Andy's talking about, there was a bar, and after we finished filming, the first few seasons, we would go to this one place, Pinot Hollywood, and it felt like someone's big living room. And there was a fireplace, and it's funny because one of the times we had the New York Mets on the show, and everybody was going to go drinking then, but I went there, and Buddy Harrelson and Jerry Gerlach,
a lot of the Mets, that night. I'm going to cry. That sounds great.
A lot of the Mets, but nobody was showing up, no celebrity, so it was just like me and Mike Duddy, and then Peter walked in, and it was great because it was just such a casual, the excitement of the show is over, and now you're having this casual hang time. So in almost a weird Hollywood thing where you would see, oh, there's the Frasier guys, and now we're the, what I mean? It's all like you want to imagine that it happened in the time of I Love Lucy too, where you would walk in and there's Desi and there's Lucy and there's a bunch of other things. You
feel cool. So, I felt cool.
Now, and you are cool, Andy. Here's two same question from people. Did you ever ad lib or try and change a line? Andy?
This could be a longer conversation, but because of my insecurities, I always felt like I didn't feel that I could change a line because I just had the feeling like the only people who could really ad lib understandably were like, you guys would all meet and Ray would come up with second takes on things.
Right.
Absolutely, I was allowed to, but I was always going through. I mean, wasn't allowed. They never said you can't or you can. I did ad lib things. It wasn't like what was it, David Chase is the one where you can't change one word or something like that. But I didn't feel comfortable doing it, and maybe that was the right way to feel. But I also didn't feel like I ever brought it up. And that's the only thing I regret. Not the only thing. I regret a lot of times in my life where I was feeling things but never could talk about it because I didn't want people to think I was like whatever. But I might have had more clarity. What was it from your guys' side about people ad-libbing other than Ray?
Yeah, well, there was no, because it's a week-long rehearsal process. If day 2, Andy Kindler goes, it feels clunky coming out of my mouth, or something like that, we would have been like, oh, obviously Phil is such a he's an in command guy and hands on, so it wouldn't be like, no, Andy, don't even try. If he was very open. So if you said so, because you would hear, and I think a lot of the people watching now comment because the actors are so good that they think, well, surely the actors ad-libbed a lot, but they didn't really. They did. But not because they are not good. It's just the scripts were so exact, and Phil is coming from the theater background where the words are very important. So it's not Andy's going out with a line. It hasn't gotten a laugh all week. He wants to change it. No, we're keeping our shitty line that doesn't get any laughs. That's not he has good lines. So there's not there. It's a completely open exchange to do
right.
it. However, it's so worked out, and getting to show night, and I've said this just for people's clarity, once you get to show night, the second takes that Andy's talking about, nothing changes other than a joke that doesn't really lead to something else. So if Andy just said, I'm going to wait to show night, and I'm going to say a completely different line just to surprise people.
Right.
He's not going to just surprise the audience. He's going to surprise A camera, B camera, C camera, the switcher, and the camera coordinator, because they're going to go, now where do we go? Because I don't even know where that, so there's a lot riding on it. But early on in the week, when it's more fluid, and or Andy could say, I feel more comfortable standing next to the kitchen table. I feel bad, that happens on stage with the director without Phil or everybody watching. So we don't see any of that. We don't see any of those suggestions.
Yeah, the only thing I say that for me was I was young. I started stand-up when I was 28. And so I was like still going through, when you're a younger actor, I was an older stand-up, but a younger actor, a lot of times you do want to change the words that you're having trouble with, or you're trying to be more conversational. So a lot of times you're just seeing, I think if you're a lot of stand-up comics who write are observing that, they probably can relate. Oh, that guy's just, that's what it was a lot of times. Was like, it wasn't like the line was, good golly gee, Ray. It wasn't like, it was almost always, I was feeling uncomfortable about something, or I was thinking about something. And also the looking into the camera. Eventually you guys said, look, Andy, I know you like the camera and you like to look in right down the barrel from stand-up, but it really is getting disconcerting. I don't, let's go home.
Spiking the camera. All right, let's go back a few more questions, then I'll say goodbye. And Andy, I'm going to text you. You must come back within 6 weeks, let's say.
Absolutely.
Because there's too many. When you drill deep, we haven't gotten into a lot of the specific episodes, right? Yeah. So when I talked to Alex Meneses, who plays Stefania, we got into, who didn't appear in nearly as many episodes as you. You can really get into the details. I feel like there's a lot we've missed and a lot we can explore. Cool. So let me just say, hello, Tina. Yes. Hello. Yes, Karen. Andy had great lines. By the way, Ray Romano had trouble saying other people's lines and getting laughs from them initially on Everybody Loves Raymond, because he felt like every laugh I've ever gotten is because I wrote a joke and I said it out loud.
That's so, wow, that's fascinating to me. That makes, and also, this is not important. I did the worst Raymond on the cast. I remember that they changed it once. They changed it. I was supposed to do an impression of him in the episode, and then they had Manfrotati do it because I could not do it.
And yet they still brought you back. So here, from Windlepoons, did you ever feel great rivalries with other sitcom/actors, or did you just focus on your own path?
I felt a lot of rivalries with me but it was all from stand-up. It was all from stand-up. Is that
in
what
the
that means?
stand-up? I don't know. I think that might yeah. I don't. In other words, I don't. For us, for Ray, and I, when Friends was on, we were on the same lot, and we weren't like friends. We were like friends. That's like the Beatles. Like, let's go try and get to their state. You know what I mean? We weren't like, man, they're beating us in the key demographics. We have to do better. Like that. At least for us, it was just like, there's Jennifer Aniston in there, and Friends at the time, you couldn't take 2 steps onto their stage because the security was so. Everybody Raymond, you could walk in and go, I'd like to see Doris Roberts. Oh yeah, she did a great. So yeah, and can you bring his package up to her? So that there, at least for us, there was not a feeling of. I think, Andy, just getting back to bringing the full circle. The only time that I've felt jealous, like showbiz-wise, if I felt like there's somebody else that's doing a job that I feel like I could really do a lot better at, but I never even got the chance to read for that or do that. And for me, for me specifically, because I guest hosted the Late Late Show after Letterman when Craig was it Kilborn walked off, and I felt really natural and really good at it. And 10 years earlier, the same thing happened with Greg Kinnear, but I didn't even get a chance to guest host.
Yes.
And I was watching all these guys that I know, many of them who are not good at conversation and not interested in people, hosting this show. And I'm going,
you mean Leno? Are you talking specifically about Leno?
And I go, and that's where you go, I really feel, that's when you feel like I'm a really good baseball player. And I'm sitting not even in the stadium, and I'm watching these guys strike out one after another. So it's more the feeling of like, I feel like I could do that job well, right, and you don't even get a chance to get even into the stadium. That's kind of more a specific thing. All right. Any let's see, final question. Let's see. Andy, did you know you were going to be a regular after the Nemo episode? Great question, Leo.
No. I don't think I was happy that I had no understanding of how it would develop or what would happen.
Yeah, and neither does the show, by the way, because at that point the show wasn't even ordered for a full year. So so now, and I say this now with the historical hindsight, where it became a big hit and it won a bunch of Emmys, but season 1. It was 83 in the ratings. It was So that was just survive to the next episode. So that's why you see John Manfrotati plays a cable guy. Kevin James, plays a delivery guy. Like, it's just get your friends some parts before the show gets canceled. So there was no in the master arc of Andy Kindler's appearances over the next 9 years, what if we start? That's not happening at all.
Right.
And if Andy's hitting home runs and delivering the jokes, it's just, okay, we need another episode, and Andy could make that funny. Great. Let's in there. Okay. I love it. So now we've already gone over time, Andy. We're getting into telethon, area. So Bobby in Hawaii, does Brad make you laugh? Does Brad Garrett make you laugh?
Unbelievable. He used to make me laugh. And also, he was very Rickles-like with me, which he can be with a lot of people. And
Don
I
Rickles.
was such a huge Rickles fan. So, yeah, he's I think he's funny. He really is funny 24/7.
Yeah, Brad Garrett is one of the funnier human beings, and also he's a great actor. Also, as we saw, and as you evidenced by his Emmys, but just as a human being, like he is a very look. Some people are funny naturally, and
I did stand up with him on the road before Raymond.
Before Raymond, wow!
And how was? You like to hunt, sir? Oh, will you? Because you go to Texas, you go, how you doing, sir? You hunt? Huh? You like to hunt? Good. How about you? What are you doing? Hunting?
By the way, yeah. Well, you know what? Next time, to be continued, Andy, because
Okay, you got it.
I'm going to reach out to you, and if you just unblock my texts, that would be
I'll
great.
try to do that.
Yes, and I'm going to dig up some pictures. And thank you, everybody, for watching this week. I'll post a lot more pictures of Andy in his 27. And if I can, by the way, all the questions and comments go away, Andy, once I post this.
Okay.
So somebody said you did do 27 episodes, and Johnny did 24 episodes, and Tom McGowan did 17 episodes. So you might be the holder of the most. I forget what the title is, because for those watching, there's a guest actor, I forget what the titles are, but one has to do with, they all have to do with money and I think number of lines, but a guest actor, I'm just going to say, without being,
Yay, health insurance.
And I hope those tens of dollars in residuals are helping. All right, Andy, awesome, as I always have when I'm having a conversation with you, an awesome time. And yeah, by the way, these must be a lot of your fans, because these are a lot of different comments that I'm used to getting.
Hey, you know what, Tom? When you book me, you're going to get 15, 20 extra people.
No, I know what I'm bringing in. All right, Andy, I'll see you in a few weeks.
You got it, brother. Thanks.
All right, thanks.